Abbas ibn Firnas lived in Spain during the AD 800 seconds, being brought up in the city of Cordoba. He was born in Corotacrana near Ronda and studied chemistry, physics, and astronomy. In his experiments he managed to manufacture glass from sand and stone, and he devised a chain of rings depicting the motions of stars and planets. He is also credited with inventing a time-measuring device called El Makada. In 852 AD, an alleged gambler daredevil named Armin Furman, also living in Cordoba, taking bets, jumped off the top of the minaret of the Great Mosque in Cordoba. Furman, who used more of a parachute-like device rather than a flying machine, survived with only minor injuries, because his wing-like garments caught enough air to break his fall. It is thought that Furman's semi-attempt at flight inspired Ibn Firnas to redirect his work away from music and glassware to the mechanics of flight. In 875 AD, 23 years after Armin Furman's flight, Ibn Firnas designed and built a flying machine which was capable of carrying a human being. Having constructed the final version of his glider, to celebrate its success, he invited the people of Cordoba to come and witness his flight. People watched from a nearby mountain as he flew some distance. All accounts seem to indicate that Ibn Firnas' glide was successful, having jumped off the hillside into the wind and remained airborne for 10 minutes, easily gliding over the fertile plains outside Cordoba, but the landing was hard. Failing a successful landing, Firnas mentioned that he had not noticed birds use their tails in flight, and that in doing so he had forgotten a tail on his flying apparatus. Not knowing that birds when they alight come down upon their tails, he forgot to provide himself with one. Ibn Firnas severely injured his back, an injury which prevented him from trying again. In 888 AD he died, many say as a result of an ongoing struggle with his back injury from the flight. Please note the graphic depicting Ibn Firnas and his flying machine, that the flying machine has no tail. However, and most importantly, it does have operable ailerons, something that no machine after him had. Even the Wright brothers' aircraft initially did not have them, depending on warping the wings to maneuver. For the record, some sources say that Abbas ibn Firnas and Armin Furman were not two separate people but one and the same person, with Armin Furman merely being a Latinized version of Abbas ibn Firnas, and that both flight attempts were done by Ibn Firnas. For centuries, inventive persons in many countries had sent balloons of all sizes and shapes into the air by filling them with hot air. As the balloons grew in size over time, increasingly heavier objects were raised with them until, in the latter half of the 18th century, humans took the leap themselves and the first manned balloon flight took place in France when Jean-François Pilote de Rosier and François-Laurent Darlans took to the air in a balloon created by the Montgolfier brothers. Manned balloon flights continued into the next century. Then, in 1852 the first airship took flight when Henry Giffard flew 27 kilometers in a steam-powered balloon. Over the next several decades, airships powered by electric motors and, later, gasoline engines took to the air. Near the end of the century, the next step in airship evolution occurred in Germany with the flight of the first rigid airship. Designed and built by aviation inventor David Schwartz, the airship also featured a solid metal outer skin. The next several years saw numerous aviation pioneers building and flying airships of various shapes, sizes, and designs. The most notable of these was undoubtedly the Luftwaffe Zeppelin LZ-1, the first of Count von Zeppelin's famous airships. The LZ-1 led to more advanced and successful designs, culminating in the great transatlantic passenger liners of the 1930s like the LZ-127 Graf Zeppelin, see photo below, and the tragically famous LZ-129 Hindenburg. The special capabilities of airships that made them such successful passenger transports also made them uniquely suitable for military use. During the First World War, England, France, Germany, and Italy all deployed airships as observation scouts and bombing platforms. In the years following the war, airship development was also underway in the United States. In 1923, the first American rigid airship, the USS Shenandoah, was launched at the Naval Air Station in Lakehurst, New Jersey, the site of the Hindenburg disaster 14 years later. The Shenandoah, the first of 4 rigid U.S. airships to be built, was notable for being the first airship in history to use the inert gas helium as its buoyancy source rather than explosive hydrogen gas. By 1935, all 4 of these airships had been destroyed in accidents. Meanwhile, Germany continued its transatlantic passenger flights in its fleet of hydrogen-filled Zeppelin airships. Then, in 1937 the LZ-129 Hindenburg exploded and crashed when it attempted to moor at Lake Hatteras. Without access to helium gas, the U.S. controlled world production and had refused to sell any of its supply. This public relations disaster caused Germany to ground its remaining fleet of Zeppelins. This effectively ended airship use for passenger transport. Germany ceased airship development, and during the Second World War only the United States made any significant use of airships, all of which were non-rigid. Today, airship development continues in several countries, although current use is typically confined to advertising, sightseeing, surveillance, and research. The American historian Lynn White digs deeper and finds that a successful glider flight was made in the year 875 by a Moorish inventor named Ibn Firnas living in Cordoba, Spain, and furthermore, states, it's entirely possible that word of Ibn Firnas's flight was brought to Aylmer of Malmesbury, another inventor of flight and a member of the Benedictine order, by returning crusaders. In 1010 Aylmer then attempted to fly himself and subsequently succeeded in flying the length of 2 football fields using an apparatus similar to that of Firnas. And although Firnas did not leave any flight instructions for his predecessors in Andalusia, it is believed that his influence may have reached these other areas in Europe including where Aylmer lived. During the summer of 1908, the U.S. Army tested the Baldwin dirigible. LTS. Lamb, Selfridge, and Falloys flew the dirigible. Thomas Baldwin was appointed by the United States government to superintend the building of all spherical, dirigible and kite balloons. He built the first government airship in 1908. An American inventor Thomas Baldwin built a 53-foot airship, the California Arrow. It won a 1-mile race in October 1904. At the St. Louis World Fair with Roy Nabenshu at the controls. This machine, designated the South Carolina I, was the Army's first powered aircraft. The first rigid-framed airship flew on November 3, 1897, and was designed by David Schwartz, a timber merchant. Its skeleton and outer cover were made of aluminum. Powered by a 12-horsepower Daimler gas engine connected to 3 propellers, it lifted off successfully in a tethered test at Tempelhof near Berlin, Germany. However, the airship crashed. In 1908, Ferdinand Zeppelin established the Friedrichshafen, the Zeppelin Foundation, for the development of aerial navigation and the manufacture of airships.